My name is Jacob Lawson, but most people just called me Jake. I was 39 when it happened. We were on a weekend trip, me, my wife, and her two sisters. The plan was simple: drive out to the countryside, stay in a cabin, disconnect. I didn't ask for much. I'd been working double shifts at the garage for weeks, trying to keep our finances stable. This trip was supposed to be a break. But what I didn't know was that they had other plans. It started on the second day. We stopped at a gas station somewhere off Route 84, middle of nowhere. I went in to grab a bottle of water and stretch my legs. When I came back out, the car was gone. At first I thought it was a joke. I waited by the curb, scanning the parking lot, expecting them to circle back around, laughing like teenagers. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 20. That's when I checked my pockets. No phone, no wallet, nothing. Just me, a bottle of water, and the slow, creeping realization that this wasn't a prank. This was real. I stood there in the heat for a while, arms crossed, pride locked in my throat. I didn't want to panic. I didn't want to believe what I already knew deep down. My wife had left me, and her sisters were in on it. Eventually, I asked the guy at the counter if I could use the phone. He handed it to me like I was just another drifter. I dialed her number, straight to voicemail. I called again, and again. Nothing. I left a message. Just one. "Okay, I get it. Real funny. Let me know when you're done." She never responded. By nightfall, I was still there. I tried to ask a few truckers if they were heading east, but no one wanted a stranger in their cab. Can't blame them. I wouldn't have taken me either. That night, I slept behind the gas station. The air smelled like diesel and damp concrete. My back ached. I used my hoodie as a pillow. And as I lay there staring at the stars, I realized something. No one was coming. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. It hurt. Not just the betrayal, but the clarity, the truth of it all. We'd been distant for months, sure, but I never thought she was cruel. I never imagined she'd look at me, someone who gave everything for her, and see something disposable, a joke to be laughed at over drinks with her sisters. I could have tried to go back, hitch a ride, call the cops, but as the sun rose over that cracked parking lot, something in me shifted. I didn't want to go home anymore. Not to her. Not to that house filled with silence and resentment. I'd already been abandoned once. I wasn't going to crawl back and beg for a second round. So, I stood up, dusted off my jeans, and walked. No destination, no plan. Just away. And that, believe it or not, was the day my life finally started. The day I walked away from that gas station, I didn't feel strong. I felt hollow, like something inside me had cracked and emptied out. But sometimes that's what freedom looks like at first: quiet, confusing, and painful. I followed the highway on foot for about 3 miles before I found a mechanic shop on the edge of a dusty little town. A small, weather-worn sign read, "Trent's Auto Repair. Honest work since 1981. I stood there for a moment, unsure why I stopped. Maybe I was hoping for a phone. Maybe I just didn't want to walk anymore. Trent was outside, leaning under the hood of an old pickup. He looked up, squinted at me, and said, "You look like hell." I smiled, for the first time in days. "Yeah, well, it's been a long week." He didn't ask questions. He just nodded toward the water cooler and said, "You ever change brake pads?" I had. Plenty of times. An hour later, grease on my hands and sun on my neck, I realized I'd been holding my breath since the moment my wife drove away. For the first time, I exhaled. Trent didn't ask for my ID, didn't ask for a resume. He paid me $50 at the end of the day and told me to come back tomorrow. So I did. I spent the first week sleeping in the back of a storage container behind the shop. There was no lock, just a sliding metal door and a few old moving blankets. At night, I'd lay awake thinking about how my life had collapsed in a single afternoon. But by morning, I was too tired from work to care. People around town started calling me Jay. I never corrected them. Jake felt like a man who got left at a gas station. Jay was someone else, someone building something from nothing. It wasn't a lie. It was just lighter. I shaved the beard, cut my hair short, bought a set of clean clothes from the thrift store, and picked up a flip phone for emergencies. Slowly, I disappeared from the world I used to know. Weeks turned into months. I got promoted to lead tech. Then Trent handed me a key to the shop one morning and said, "You break it, you fix it." It was the closest thing to trust I'd felt in years. I kept my head down, saved every dollar, and learned everything I could. Transmission work, welding, diagnostics. Trent had no kids and started letting me handle more of the business side. Said I had a head for it. Said he reminded him of himself when he still gave a damn. By the end of the first year, I'd bought a trailer on the edge of town. It was small, 2 rooms and a porch with a view of nothing, but it was mine, and it was quiet. I didn't tell anyone about my past. Not the gas station, not the marriage, not the sisters laughing as they sped off. That version of me was gone. He died the night I slept on concrete and woke up under stars I didn't recognize. Jay wasn't a new man. He was what was left after everything else was burned away. And oddly enough, he was enough. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was chasing something or trying to fix someone else's mess. I just woke up, worked hard, and went home. No drama, no mind games, no pretending to be okay. I didn't think I'd ever see her again. But I was wrong. And when she finally showed up, it wasn't for closure. It was for something much heavier. It had been almost 3 years. 3 years since I last heard her voice, since I watched her taillights disappear into the haze of a sunburnt highway, since I left Jacob Lawson behind and stepped into a life no one could touch. I wasn't hiding anymore. I wasn't healing. I was simply living. Then, one Friday afternoon, she walked into the shop. I didn't see her at first. I was under the hood of a '94 Bronco with a faulty ignition coil, focused on work like always. But the front bell rang, the one we rigged up with an old toolbox spring, and something in the air changed. I wiped my hands, stepped out from the bay, and there she was, Marissa. Same eyes, same posture, same way of folding her arms like she was bracing for a storm she wasn't ready to face. She looked older, tired. Her makeup barely covered the worry in her face, and her voice cracked just a little when she spoke. Jay, can we talk?" It felt like the world went silent. The hum of the engine bay, the radio playing old country tunes, even the air itself, everything paused. I didn't answer right away. Trent was out back on a parts run. The place was empty. Just me, her, and the ghost of everything we never said. I finally nodded and motioned toward the bench out front. She sat down first. I took my time, grabbing a water bottle and a clean rag for my hands. I didn't want her to see me rattled. Not now. Not after everything. When I sat, she looked at me like she was trying to memorize the new face I wore, as if Jay didn't quite fit the man she remembered. "I found you through one of your old friends. Someone posted a photo. You were in the background, working on a truck." I didn't ask which friend. I didn't care. "What do you want, Marissa?" I asked, calm, measured, like I was asking for a receipt. She hesitated, swallowed hard, looked down at her hands, then back up at me. I wouldn't be here if I didn't have to, I promise. That much was true. She never cared for apologies, and she wasn't the kind of woman who chased ghosts unless something was chasing her. I had a baby, she said. The words hit harder than anything I expected. For a second, I thought I misheard her, but the way her hands trembled, the way she couldn't meet my eyes, I knew she was telling the truth. His name is Micah. He's 2.5. He's sick, Jake. I said nothing. She went on. Some kind of blood disorder. The doctors are saying he needs a transplant. They've tested everyone. Me, my family, even donors. Nothing matches. Then she looked at me. Finally, really looked at me. They need his father. I leaned back on the bench, breathing slow. It wasn't anger that boiled up. It was something colder, something quieter. She'd erased me from her life, hidden a child, and now, when she had nowhere else to go, she came back. You didn't tell me, I said. I was scared, ashamed. I don't know. I thought it would be easier if I just handled it alone. Until you couldn't. She didn't deny it. I'm not here to beg, she whispered. I need your help. I nodded slowly, letting the silence speak louder than anything I could have said. I'll do it, I said, but on one condition. She looked up, eyes wide. I don't want custody. I'm not asking to be in his life, but my name goes on that birth certificate. He has the right to know who his father is. One day, when he's old enough to ask, I want him to find the truth in writing, not in someone's memory. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it and nodded. And just like that, the past circled back to me, not as revenge, but as responsibility. The hospital was quiet, sterile, too bright for comfort. The kind of place where hope and fear walk side by side down long white corridors. They scheduled the blood work for a Tuesday morning. I didn't ask questions, didn't press for details. All I knew was that Micah, my son, needed a donor, and I was the best shot they had. Marissa waited for me outside the admissions office, holding a clipboard and pretending to read through the papers. Her hair was tied back, no makeup this time. She looked more like a mother than I had ever seen her. We didn't speak much on the way in. There wasn't anything left to say. The nurse who greeted us was kind, mid-50s, soft voice, the type who's seen too much but still believes in grace. She guided us into a small room with a window and a single vinyl chair. I sat down, rolled up my sleeve, and let her go to work. You nervous? She asked. No, I said. Just ready. Truth was, I didn't know what I felt. There was no anger anymore, no confusion, just a strange stillness, like standing at the edge of a cliff and knowing you won't fall. Not because there's a railing, but because you finally found your balance. The needle went in. The blood flowed. A few minutes later, it was done. Marissa stepped outside to take a call. I stayed in the chair for a moment, watching the sunlight hit the linoleum floor. A quiet part of me wished I could meet him, Micah. Not to play father, not to fill a role, just to look into the eyes of a little boy who came from me and know that he was real. But I'd made my choice. No strings, no expectations. Just truth. The results came in 3 days later. I was a match.
a perfect one, in fact. The doctor said the odds were rare, closer than most siblings even. Strong blood, he called it. I signed the release forms and gave my consent for the procedure. They told me what to expect: mild pain, some fatigue, a few days of soreness. I didn't care. If it gave that boy a fighting chance, it was worth every second. The day of the transplant, I arrived early. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't bring anyone. Just walked in with my ID and my word. They gave me a room and a gown and hooked me up to machines that beeped and clicked with quiet purpose. Before they sedated me, a nurse came in with a clipboard. "Just one question, Mr. Lawson," she said. "Do you want to remain anonymous in the record, or should we list your name as the donor from Micah James Taylor?" Taylor. Her last name. I looked at the form, then at her. You can write Jacob Lawson. He deserves to know. And then I went under. When I woke up, it was late. The sky outside was dark and the lights above me were dimmed. I was alone in the room, but on the table by the bed sat a small envelope. No name, no note, just a folded piece of paper with one sentence written in a careful, shaky hand. "He looks like you." I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just closed my eyes and let that be enough.
Recovery took a few days. The soreness was nothing I hadn't felt before, like pulling an engine that didn't want to come loose. But it wasn't the pain that stayed with me. It was the quiet. The hospital discharged me on a Friday afternoon. No balloons, no handshakes, just a clipboard, a discharge slip, and a nurse who thanked me in that way people do when they don't know the whole story, but sense that it matters. I didn't see Marissa. I didn't ask to. Instead, I walked down the hallway, past the pediatric wing, past a waiting room where a woman held a juice box for a sleeping toddler with a bandage on his hand. I wondered if that was him, if that was Micah. I didn't stop to find out. Outside, the world looked the same. Same traffic, same sun. But something in me had shifted. I wasn't returning to the same life. I wasn't going back to anything. I was simply going forward. Trent had kept the shop running in my absence. When I showed up Monday morning, he nodded once and handed me a wrench. "The world didn't fall apart," he said, "but damn, the carburetor sure did." We got back to work like nothing had happened. And that's what I loved about that place, about that version of my life. No one needed to know, no one asked, no one judged. But that afternoon, Marissa showed up again. This time, she didn't step inside. She stood by the fence at the end of the lot, arms folded, watching me with the same caution someone might give a man standing too close to the edge of a roof. I walked over slowly, wiping my hands with a rag. "I didn't expect to see you again," I said. She nodded. "I didn't plan to come. I just wanted to say thank you." I looked at her, really looked. The woman who once laughed as I stood stranded on the side of the road now looked like someone carrying the weight of choices she couldn't take back. "I don't have to thank you," I said. "It wasn't for you." She looked down. I know. There was silence between us, thick and full of all the things we'd never say. Regrets, missed moments, maybe even a hint of what could have been if things had been different. She said, "I told him." I raised an eyebrow. "Micah, I told him you were his father. I showed him your name. He doesn't understand yet, but one day he will." I nodded once. That was all I needed. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small photograph. It was Micah, standing in a hospital gown, holding a toy truck. He had my eyes. She handed it to me, then stepped back. I won't come again, unless he wants to. I held the photo in my hand, unsure what to do with it. Frame it, hide it, burn it. Instead, I folded it gently and slipped it into the chest pocket of my work shirt. Marissa turned to leave, but stopped after a few steps. He might want to meet you one day. If he does, he'll know where to find me. And with that, she was gone. No tears, no last words, just a quiet goodbye between two people who had nothing left to hold on to but one small life that mattered more than the past ever could. I went back to work, turned a wrench, tightened a bolt, and let the silence say the rest. 3 years passed. I didn't mark them on a calendar. They came and went like seasons do, subtle, slow, and honest. Life wasn't dramatic out here. It was steady, and that's exactly what I needed. The shop grew. Trent retired, but not before handing me the keys one morning with a crooked smile and a handshake that lasted longer than expected. He didn't say much, never did, but the trust in his eyes said everything. Now it was Jay's Garage. Simple, clean. My name on the sign, the real one. Not Jake, not Jacob, just Jay. I kept to myself, worked hard, hired a couple of younger guys from the local tech school and trained them up the way Trent trained me. Built a reputation around the county. People knew we were honest, quick, and fair. At night, I'd sit on the porch of my small house on the hill, drink black coffee, and listen to the wind move through the pines. No voices, no echoes from the past, just quiet. And sometimes, I'd take out the photo. It had faded a little. Micah, at 2.5, holding that toy truck in a hospital gown. The first time I saw that photo, I thought, that's my kid. Now I looked at it and thought, I hope he's doing all right. I didn't reach out. I didn't ask for updates. I kept my word, let him come if and when he wanted. Then one morning, the bell over the shop door rang and something in my chest shifted. He was taller than I imagined, maybe 6 or 7 years old now. Big eyes, curious, hesitant. Behind him stood a woman, not Marissa, but someone new. A friend, maybe, or a teacher. She stayed by the door while he approached the counter. "You Jay?" he asked, voice small but steady. I nodded. "I am." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a crumpled envelope, handed it to me like it weighed more than he could carry. "I drew you something," he said. Inside was a drawing, stick figures under a truck, with bold letters that read, "My dad fixes cars." I felt something deep in my chest tighten, not pain, not joy, just fullness. "You did a good job," I said. He smiled. "Can I watch you fix one?" I glanced at the woman by the door. She gave a small nod. I stepped out from behind the counter, knelt down beside him. "You like engines?" I asked. He nodded fast. "Then come on, I'll show you how we check the oil." He followed me into the bay, eyes wide as he looked at the tools, the cars, the smell of grease and dust and work. I showed him the basics, let him hold a wrench. He beamed like I'd handed him a sword. For an hour, we worked side by side. No need for explanations, no heavy questions, just a boy and his father fixing something together. When it was time to leave, he looked up at me and said, "Can I come back sometime?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "You can come back anytime,"
Micah. He smiled, then ran to the door. Before he left, he turned back one last time and said, "Thanks, Dad." And just like that, he was gone. But this time, the goodbye didn't hurt, because now I wasn't just a man who was left behind. I was a man who had stayed. The mornings came earlier now. Not because I set an alarm, but because I wanted to watch the world wake up. There was something honest about the stillness before the sun rose above the hills. No noise, no past, just breath, steam from a mug, and the sound of birds deciding what kind of day it would be. The garage opened at 8, but I'd get there by 6. Not to get ahead of the work, but to keep the rhythm. The tools, the concrete floor, the soft hum of lights warming up, it all grounded me. Micah started coming by more often. Not every week, sometimes not for months, but he always came back. Each time a little taller, a little bolder, a little more like someone who wanted to understand where he came from. He'd ask questions, about cars mostly, how spark plugs worked, why oil had to be changed, how you knew when brakes were failing. But sometimes he asked other questions too. Did you and Mom like each other? Why didn't you live with us? And I told him the truth. Not all of it, not the cruel details or the bitterness, just the truth that mattered. We were young, I'd say, and sometimes people make mistakes they can't take back. He never asked me to explain more. Maybe he sensed the weight of the answers. Maybe he didn't need to. Either way, I gave him what he asked for. No more, no less. What surprised me most wasn't how much I came to care for him. It was how easy it was. There were no custody battles, no forced holidays, just visits on his terms and answers on mine. One day, he showed up with a school assignment. Family tree, it read. He pointed to a blank spot near the top. "Can I write your name here?" I took a breath. "Only if you want to," I said. He smiled. "I do. Jacob Lawson, right there in block letters, just under Dad." I didn't cry. I didn't even smile, not right away. But that night, I sat on the porch with the drawing in my hand and stared at the stars I once slept under, alone and forgotten. Now, I wasn't forgotten. I was known. Not by everyone, not loudly, but by the only one who mattered. Trent passed away the following spring, left me the deed to the shop, the land, and an old journal full of grease-stained notes and half-sketched engine diagrams. He didn't have kids. I was the closest thing. Micah helped me clear out Trent's things. He was 11 by then, sharp, steady, thoughtful, the kind of boy who listened more than he talked. As we boxed up old parts, he looked at me and said, "When I grow up, can I run the shop?" I didn't answer right away. I just handed him the wrench I'd been holding. "You already are." And that was it. No ceremony, no fireworks, just a quiet passing of something real from one man to another without a word wasted. I never needed to be a hero, never needed applause. All I ever wanted was to be seen for who I really was and to leave something behind that meant more than anger or pain. And in the end, I did. Not through revenge, not through bitterness, but through silence and legacy.
I never saw Marissa again. Not in person, anyway. From time to time, someone in town would mention her name, usually in passing. Rumors drifted through like dust in the late summer air. That she'd moved across the state, that she remarried, that she hadn't. I didn't chase the truth. I didn't need it. What mattered was here. The boy who carried my eyes, the garage that carried my name, and the quiet mornings that no one could take away. But every so often, I wondered if she knew. If she knew about the porch where Micah sat beside me, legs swinging off the edge, asking questions about drive shafts and carburetors. If she knew he brought me his science fair projects and let me proofread his essays. If she knew I was teaching him how to weld, not just metal, but patience and presence and pride. He never called me Dad in front of her. I imagine he was trying to protect something. Or maybe she asked him not to. I never brought it up. Because when we were together, it didn't matter what he called me. I was there, and that presence, the consistency of it, meant more than any title. One afternoon, he came by the shop with a sealed envelope. "It's from Mom," he said, like he wasn't sure what to feel about it. I took it, waited until he left, then opened it slowly, hands steady. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Jake, you were right. He deserves to know who you are, and I see now that I never did. Thank you for giving him what I couldn't." That was it. No apology, no closure, just those 4 lines. But it was enough, because in the end, I didn't need her to understand me. I needed her to let him find me, and she did. Micah was 15 the first time he introduced me to someone as his father. He didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, just said it like it was the most natural truth in the world. And maybe it was. He wasn't mine in the way most fathers expect, but he was mine in all the ways that mattered. I'd never told him what happened that day at the gas station. Never told him how far I'd fallen before I stood again. One day, maybe I will. Or maybe I won't need to. Because legacy isn't about stories we tell. It's about how we show up when it counts. It's the quiet way a man turns a wrench, signs a paper, folds a picture, teaches a boy how to listen before he speaks. That's what I left behind. Not a trail of revenge, not a list of regrets. Just a life rebuilt, honest, earned, and strong enough to hold another. So if she ever drives past the shop one day, if she ever sees the name on the sign and the boy sweeping the floor with grease on his hands and confidence in his step, she'll know. Not what I became, but what she lost. And that will be enough.